how have you guys kind of gotten the word out about this personally? I remember when Garga was tweeting about you, because I'm huge into Bored Ape Yacht Club, and I was like, okay, cool. We got the Yuga founders being like, yo, you guys need to be paying attention.
Honestly, it's just been slow, organic growth,
Awesome.
just steady building. I don't think we really have any like growth hacks. It's just, yeah, just slow and organic. Unless Barry, you have a different take.
No, I think slow and organic is is definitely how, or like that's how we approach things, right? And I think there's a reason for that. I think for us, um, this is not our first company, right? Like we've all had our own companies. We've all had successes and of course failures, as everyone needs to have. Um, and so for us, like we really always had a long-term vision for this. We knew that we had something special on our hands quite quickly. And we all decided that, let's try to make this the thing that we're going to do for the rest of our lives. And so I think when you have that mindset, you don't really get caught up in, hey, what's happening today? What's happening tomorrow? What can we do to like pump this bag as fast as possible? And there's pluses and minuses, right? Like, I'm sure there's things that we could have done to pump the floor price or increase the volume in a crazy way. But I think the reality is that a lot of the people, I mean, we all know this. I mean, Vaughn, you know this. This is your whole world. It's like a lot of these projects, like 99% went to zero. Even ones that we all were looking at being like, oh my God, is this the next thing? And now they like don't exist, right? And so I think it's that, but it's also paired with like part of the vision is to become like a proper franchise. And to be a franchise, you need to like engage with more legacy businesses like film and television and gaming and comic books and board games and merchandise, and those things they don't move at the same pace as Web3, right? And so for us it's all about finding the balance, and so it takes a long time to do those things, and I think we always have to understand where we are in our timeline of when these larger things are going to pop off, because if you move too fast, then you don't have enough sort of gas in the tank to get to where the next waypoint is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think one of the most pivotal things potentially I've ever heard through interviews on the stream is you saying that, it was a decision that you guys have that you're wanting to do this kind of for the rest of your lives. And that's an extremely bold commitment. And I think a lot of people say that, but then there's not always like a tangible yes, like we're actually going to do that following. So give me a little bit of the background, Baron Elf, and Bear, we can start with you if you want, about how you kind of got involved with this. And, if you're open to it, I'd love to know about some of the things that you learned from a previous life when you're talking about these kind of failures, so people know that there is trials and tribulations, and then there is potentially some major success at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, for sure. God, the 2 minute, what's like the 60-second drill on me? I'm like a cat. I've lived 9 lives. I've yet to die and use up any of them. But shit, I was like a professional musician for a long time. I toured all over the world right out of high school, and then I came to Los Angeles, started like being a production assistant on like big movies and stuff like that, and just like starting at the bottom, and then started writing scripts, sold scripts, started writing in film and television. I used to do rewrites for DreamWorks animated movies like Madagascar and Shrek, and mostly in comedy and animation. And then through that, I met someone that got me involved in a company called Maker Studios, which was around like 2010 or 11. And that's where I met Elf. And there I ran creative. And essentially what it was is we called them a multi-channel networks. And we aggregated YouTube channels back when people started, producing content on a regular frequency in cadence, excuse me. And that was actually my first experience with online communities and understanding how online communities work. How do you grow them? How do you keep them engaged? How do you diversify other revenue streams? And so like working with people like PewDiePie and sort of like those top digital influencers. We sold that to Disney in 2015 for a nice chunk of change. And then I started a VR company. Elf and I briefly worked together on that company also. Sold it and then took some time off. And then I'll pass it to Elf. I essentially came on the day after the mint. Right, Elf?
Yeah. So just real brief on my history. I've been working in animation and video games for 10 years. Yeah, I met Bear at Maker. Then we worked in VR. And I've always been I've been a digital artist for like 10 years. And the painful thing about being a digital artist is because your work is digital, it can be infinitely copied and spread around the internet without attribution and without authentication, and it's really hard to get paid for what you do. And then NFTs come along and change that whole game. And so I had been working with our third partner, Dota, for about 10 years on various things. And so Dota and I summer of 2021, put together Forgotten Runes Wizards Cult as an NFT project. It took us about 2 months to make the whole thing. And when we launched it, the whole thing sold out in 20 minutes. And the next day I was like, I want to take this further. I want to run with this for the rest of my life. And I want to make a TV show. And the first person I knew to open that door was Bear Snake. And so I called him and I told him what happened. And he's like, I'm in. And the rest is history.
That's an amazing story. But recently, like I've seen videos and comments about how you guys are doing games, and the vision really took even more of a life on its own. So was that kind of, as soon as you sold out, you're like, I want to do everything that I can? Or was it, hey, let's get the foundation set for the show and then expand from there? Like, how fast did the ball roll here?
I would say we're just very hungry people. and I think Elf, I'll not to cut you off, but I think the one thing I'll say to that idea of like trying to be prolific is, in all of these worlds of film and television, being a digital artist like Elf was, being a writer, there's these gatekeepers, right, that you have to get through because you need their resources to make the thing. And all of that whole concept went out the window with Wizards and with Web3 because you're able to generate revenue from the get-go, and more importantly, create a community of people who sort of are fanatical about the property.
Yeah, I mean, what we realized very early on is, like, what is an NFT? And for us, and I'm sure for a lot of people, at its core, it's intellectual property. And at its core, it's intellectual property. Yeah, and so before that, before NFTs came along, IP was leveraged through film, TV, video games, books, toys, merch, the entire franchise map of objects or whatever. And so blockchain is just another component in that franchise ecosystem, except it's probably the most powerful one in terms of like being able to digitally authenticate the IP, and thus share the ownership on a more horizontal structure. That changes all the other formats that came before it. That changes the film and TV and games and merch and all that, in various ways, and we can dive into it. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we realize, yeah, this is just IP, and blockchain is a new way to explore this IP.
So you guys have the NFTs, it's pixel art, but by the animation, it doesn't look like, it's kind of that pixelated feel. It's more of, I don't even know, realistic cartoon maybe would be the right verbiage.
Yeah, like
Animation, yeah, there we go. You guys are the expert, not me. So the with that, how has it been kind of growing from that aspect, like behind the scenes? Has it been pretty smooth sailing in terms of creating that animation? Has there been hiccups? Is there any kind of timelines that are public in that regard?
It hasn't been smooth. No, even that trailer, it's like 90 seconds long. That took almost a year to make.
No, it wasn't a year.
Well, I mean, listen, a lot of collections. We're waiting to see anything from them. So if you say that, we'll believe you.
I said 8 months, right, Bear? Like,
I don't know. I feel like it was like 5.
okay, it felt like a freaking year and a half.
Well, it felt like 5 years, Chris.
But yeah, I mean, the jump from pixel to like high res animation is very intentional. You know, we consider ourselves style agnostic. But I also will say, like, the decision to use pixel art as the core NFT was also very deliberate, because when you start at this low res visual baseline, you can extrapolate from that in infinite different ways. Whereas if you start with something very high res, then you're kind of locked into that high res. It's kind of difficult to down res. So we see the pixel characters, as we call them, creative primitives, which just, this is like the seed of creation, and then you can expand infinitely off of that. Because again, if you like start with something very high res, then in your head you're like, okay, that's what it is. I can't deviate from that. All the visual information has been solved. But like with a pixel character, you can imagine 1,000 different iterations. Like I remember when I used to play 8-bit video games like Final Fantasy, and like obviously like the graphical interface was very simplistic, but in your head you're imagining these like beautiful like cinematic scenes, because the pixel art leaves so much room for your imagination. So yeah, that sort of describes the stylistic ecosystem that we're working in.
Yeah. And then Schiller, as far as like timelines and things, yeah, so we produced that trailer with some friends of ours at a company called Titmouse. So they produce like Big Mouth. They do Legend of Vox Machina on Amazon. They've been
Midnight Gospel.
Midnight Gospel. And so we produced that trailer. And so, so that was more like, I almost don't even call it a trailer. It's more of like a world teaser. Like this is like generally the style visually, we didn't really hit specific character arcs in that, which is, I think, what a great trailer does, is sort of, project what the audience should be expecting. As far as where the show's at now, so we, an old friend of mine named Derek Kolstad, I sort of pitched him what we were doing, and I like by the end of our lunch, he was like, "Yeah, I'm totally in." And so we were very lucky to have Derek. Derek wrote and created the John Wick franchise, so he wrote all the movies. He executive produced Falcon Winter Soldier, the television show. He's doing Splinter Cell for animated Splinter Cell for Netflix, and so we're basically putting together the heartbeat of that show, right? So who are the main characters? We have a pilot script, and just sort of developing that, and I'd say we're getting quite close to landing distribution. And so when I say landing distribution, I mean like what streaming service will it end up going on? And typically for animation, production cycles are like 18 months, give or take.
We also got Christian Nairn to narrate our trailer. If you don't know that name, then you may know the name Hodor from Game of Thrones. That's the actor.
Yeah.
All of this stuff is what Bear set up. This is why I called him on the second day to help us out.
Well, okay, so we've learned a little bit about Bear, but with everything that's going on, it seems like this is a huge effort. So can we talk a little bit about some of the team members that aren't here and some ones that are pivotal? And I don't really know where to necessarily start, so you guys kind of lead the way. Who else is on your team, and why should people really be paying attention to what you guys will be able to create together?
Yeah, our third founder is Dota. He's like the Solidity dev, the programmer. Technically, he's also the CEO, but he's very busy coding a new mini game that we're getting ready to release within like a month. He's actually the most famous on Twitter between the three of us. He tweets way more than we do and way better quality than we do. But yeah, Dota is the third founder. And then how many employees do we have there? Like 10 or?
Yeah, like yeah, I think 11 or 12. 11 or 12. So the teams, it's grown. Half of them have been hired from the community. But to like even just go back on Dota, I think the reason we've been able to do so much in a short amount of time is one, we don't have any egos because we've already, we're not in this to prove ourselves. We've already been successful in our own right. But we also have very little overlap in our skill set. And so, in my experience, and I think this is sort of a general rule, if you're going to have a business partner, have a business partner that does all the things that you're not good at.
Yeah.
And so with Dota, we have this trifecta of, Dota. I mean, he deployed one of the first smart contracts for NFTs back in like 18 or the end of 17. He's technically been in crypto. I think he like mined Bitcoin like 09. And he's the guy who's like, what I remember when we first got started, I was like, well, can we do this? He's like, we can do whatever you want. Like we'll write the code for whatever you want. That's not the blocking. Like the blocking is like, what is the idea? And so, and then for myself, like I really engage with like the franchise piece of this, right? Like getting the publishers of the comic book, getting the artists, right? Like helping get talent, the writers, and then doing like business deals and operations. And then Elf, you know, he is, I would say, like the heartbeat, right? I mean, he is one of the most creative, talented artists I've ever met, and I think that's probably our biggest differentiation. There's other bears out there that like have experience making deals, right? There's other amazing coders. But I think, and I think with Elf, he's always asking, how does it come back to the world and to the lore, and does it make sense? And just because we can do it, should we do it? And so I think with all of these different perspectives, and then you like on top of it all, you put a layer of trust. If Elf wants to do something and he's like, I really think we need to be doing it, me and Dodo are like, go, let's go. And the same goes for all three of us. So that allows us to move quite quickly. Sorry, I'm kind of yapping a little bit.
No, I love it. I think it's really cool how much passion you guys have, and I think it comes across really well. Now, blockchain gaming is something that everybody's touting is going to be the next wave here, and I think a lot of people thought last year was going to be that. And Elf, you mentioned a minute ago that you guys are about to release some mini games. So, can you give us some insight on that, and if there's any kind of bigger plans outside of that mini game, or that's kind of just the sole focus?
Yeah, fun. So we've got a blockchain game coming out pretty soon called The Battle for Goblin Town. And so I'll talk about the story and the lore behind it and the why, which is, everything that Forgotten Runes does is sort of just a commentary on the IRL world. I mean, even down to the wizards and everything in the collection, this is all just commentaries on like historical archetypes. But so why did we go with Goblin Town? Well, the market is currently in Goblin Town. Just look at the charts. And so we wanted to make a commentary on this. So we're building this, what we're sort of calling like a degen blockchain game. You could also describe it as sort of a mix between Settlers of Catan and Wolf Game. But it's very big, very complex, complex in a fun way, I hope. The art is amazing. There's going to be a ton of different tokens involved. And yeah, that's the rundown basically.
Yeah, I think, one thing with Forgotten Runes is we have this moralistic standard that doesn't necessarily organically play into the degen nature of Web3 and speculation. And so we wanted to do something that I think played a little bit to that ethos. And we didn't want it to be like completely sitting on top of Forgotten Runes tokens. And so we created this Goblin Town. And of course, there's deep lore, like Elf's talking about. Goblin Town has been on our map since day one. But I think actually it was Dota's idea. He was playing Catan with his family, and he messaged us, and he was like, I think we should make an on-chain version of Settlers of Catan. And so that's how it started. But I think there's this whole meta that will come about that takes the fun like multiplayer community experience of board games and the mechanics that go along with that, and bringing them on chain. And we think there's a really big opportunity there. And so this is our first sort of swing at it.
And is this going to be only available for people with NFTs from the collection, or?
No, so it's for everybody. Of course, if you own a wizard or a warrior, I think we have like 8 collections, 5 character collections. So depending on what character you own, there's tiers, right? So wizards are really our Genesis collection, so they'll always get sort of the best treatment. So we're going to do a claimed airdrop for all of them. We also have we got a lot of friends in the space, a lot of projects that we have a ton of respect for. We did this Halloween trick or treat thing last year, so we invited 10 of the biggest blue chips, and everybody who participated in that gets an airdrop. And then, of course, because of the mechanics of the game, you can't really play the game on an L1. And so we're going to Arbitrum. And so Arbitrum, and this has been a really great learning experience for us, is like understanding what the Arbitrum ecosystem looks like. They seem like they're a really highly engaged, gamer-focused community, or the whole constellation of communities. And so we're doing airdrops there. And then once we launch, anyone will be able to jump in. I mean, again, like it really is like you take the mechanics, not the mechanics of Wolf Game, but this idea of like anyone can come in and win. You don't need like, just because you got an airdrop doesn't mean that like you're going to be the person who wins, right? And so, so we'll see how it goes. But we want, the board is massive, and thousands of people will be playing at the same time.
A little curious about the Arbitrum decision, just because we've seen a ton of people decide, hey, we're moving to Polygon, or moving to Optimism, Solana, whatever. Can you give just kind of a quick little overview of what the benefits for Arbitrum was, potentially for other founders that are in the same position that you guys will be, and also for users of like, hey, where do I pay attention if I'm interested in blockchain gaming?
So this was a Dota decision because he's the coder. And I don't know the full reason, but from what I gathered, it was simply that Arbitrum offered more functionality than Polygon or Solana or any of the others.
Yeah, and I think also there's this whole thing about like liquidity, right? And there's obviously more liquidity in ETH-L1 than there is in any of these other subchains or L2s. And so the answer is like, no one knows who's going to win that game. We feel really good about the Arbitrum team over there. Andrew, who's their CMO, is a real straight shooter, and they've treated us really well. And I think, we'll see how it goes. I mean, this is already one big experiment, right? Web3. So this is just like a sub experiment within the experiment. But it feels like there's enough liquidity there, and they seem to have some growth. And their product seems to work pretty seamlessly. So we'll see. But they're like you're saying, Schiller, it's like we have to make it really easy for people to bridge over there, and so that's sort of part of what we're working on now, is to make it as sort of frictionless as possible. We'll let you know how it goes.
All right. I appreciate that. So one thing that I want to kind of do with this is, for myself, and I think other people, when you're like, okay, Forgotten Runes Wizard Cult, you check it out. You're like, okay, for the Wizards, maybe I don't have an ETH to spend on this. You have a whole bunch of other collections along there. So I'm going to turn this into a YouTube video, and I'm going to do an overlay with it. But could you take a little bit of time to potentially go through each of the collections that you guys have, and just maybe touch briefly on what the purpose of it, or, future utility, whatever, for each?
Wait, Schiller, can we do a quick plug for like the actual real big game that we're making?
Yeah, of course, for sure. Would love that.
Sorry, we spent a lot of time. We will make it quick because I think it's really important. to sort of dive into these collections and what they represent. But we're launching a full-on MMORPG later this year. We partnered with a really great game studio called Bisonic. We have a team of like 40 people that have been working on this game for about a year and a half. Very exciting. You can play as your wizard, and over time we'll be bringing in the other collections. And I think something that got us really excited from the get-go was we did a private land sale the top of last year. And we were ecstatic with the people who came in. So 776 and Alexis came in as investors. Ryan Zur and Dialectic came in, placeholder, one confirmation. And then we have our OG crypto Twitter friends, D, Sobi, and Fiscantes came in as well. And so that is full force happening behind the scenes. We'll be doing a public land sale in the coming months. And then, actually the alpha is sort of ready to go out to a small group. And then, the full on beta will be launched probably Q3 this year. So it's exciting.
Awesome. And you guys are doing that with like a team house small again?
Oh no! So we partner with our friends at Bisonic.
Oh,
So
I
these
got
guys-
you. Okay, so that's interesting. Sorry, my apologies for not catching that. We've heard other collections also do that partnership thing. So can you maybe briefly touch on what it's like to find those partnerships? Because you said before about how you want to find business partners that are good at things you're not. And I mean, I guess this would kind of fall under that category, but also having a partnership of that realm, and potentially, I'm assuming the finances with it are quite significant. How do you decide on the partner for it?
You find people who are passionate about the type of game that you want to make, and you make sure that they have built those games before. For instance, I think the art director Elf, wasn't he one of the guys who was in WoW? What was like his big game before?
I think it was WoW, yeah, or
Yeah, it was
Skyrim maybe.
WoW. Yeah, and so like this company has. I hate the stat of like we have a collective experience of 1,000 years. Like that's like the dumbest. I hate that that like equation. But point is we found them and we went with them because they understood what we were trying to do. They understand that story and game first is what we wanted to do. It's not about how do we pump land tokens, how do we get people to spend as much money as possible. The goal here is how do you make a great fucking game, and it's free to play and it's browser based. So, and that's where the team of 40 people come in, is like through Bisonic, and so we talk with them all the time, and so that's how we're able to get it done.
Awesome. Elf, anything else to add to that?
No, it's just a big, beautiful MMORPG, blockchain based, that we're working on, and I'm really excited to get it out there.
I love it. All right, so let's dive into some of the different collections. So you got Forgotten Ruins, Wizard's Cult, you got Sacred Flame, Forgotten Souls, Forgotten Ponies, you got the Warriors as well, and then it looks like Book of Lore Principles goodies, but I mean, I don't know if that's just some a part of your site, but I'm checking out the OpenSea page here. But for the YouTube video, I'll overlay all the different collections you guys are going to talk about. So let's just start with Forgotten Ruins, Wizard's Cult.
Well, but before I dive into the collections, let me just sort of give like the whole purpose of this project. We call it a decentralized world build. Another way to think of it is an open source Middle Earth. Okay, so instead of J.R.R. Tolkien, who created all Middle Earth and spent decades of his life making the whole mythos and the history of this legendarium, and then fast forward 50 years and it's bought by movie studios and video game studios and they license it and it turns into a big billion-dollar empire. Instead of that, what if you decentralize that entire process? What if you make that whole thing open source? Okay, so instead of one person and one corporation building this world, you open that up to an entire community of token holders. And so when you buy one of these tokens, wizard, warrior, soul, pony, whatever, that gives you creative access to build the world together, okay? And so when you own a Forgotten Runes character, you own it legally, financially, creatively, emotionally, like every level possible. you now own that character that's in this open source Middle Earth. It's like owning Gandalf or owning Frodo. So basically, to break down the different collections, yeah, the Wizard's Cult is the core. It's what we launched with. I call it the most elite token in the whole system. It's got the most utility, the most functionality, the most like cultural cachet behind it. It's got the most history behind it. I mean, look at every fantasy franchise out there. The wizard character is usually sitting at the top of the hierarchy. Like Gandalf is like the most badass character in Lord of the Rings. Okay, so those are the wizard tokens. Shortly after that, we introduced a burn mechanism. We airdropped this token called the Sacred Flame to the community holders, and they were able to use that to burn their wizard, and thus deflating the wizard supply, and get back what we call a forgotten soul. And so now that's the Souls collection. It's a collection of like undead zombies and liches and ghouls, and it's sort of like the darker counterpart to the wizards. I believe that collection has about 600 to 800 tokens in it, and it's deflated the wizard supply by that much. So the Wizards and the Souls, they're sort of partner collections. After that, we released a small collection of ponies from the Elysian Fields. The Wizards and the Souls can ride these adorable little ponies. You should see the things that our community is doing with these ponies. We've got pony races. We've got like fun animations that you can download of your character riding your pony. They all have really fun names. The ponies are a blast.
Yeah, and by the way, they were essentially a redeemable airdrop in a merch box that we did in, what was that holiday of
Christmas of 2021, I believe. Yeah.
And so
we
people
get away ponies for Christmas.
Yeah, people bought like a box that had a bunch of merch. I don't know, I think it was like $300, and we sold out. We snuck a QR code in there, and so people scanned it, and then they got a pony. I think the pony floor was at like 4 or 5 ETH for, I don't know, 5-6 months. So anyway, it was a gift to the community, really.
Shortly, or a few months after the ponies, there's a gate on our map, on our world, called the Gate to the Seventh Realm. This gate was opened, I believe it was in April or May of 2022.
April.
And a bunch of wizards in our community had to team up and open it. They had to meet certain requirements to open it, and they got rewarded for doing so. But once the gate was open, we had a 7-day auction where every day a new legendary beast came forth, and that beast was auctioned on. And so there was only 7 of them, and they're these big, beautiful, just legendary beasts. And once the auction was over, at the end of each day for 7 days, each beast released, I believe, 49 spawn into the ecosystem that were randomly airdropped to community holders. This event was super fun. It like played to the whales who were able to auction buy these beasts, but then the rest of the community got free beast spawn if they were lucky. And then the final collection is, of course, the warriors. So if the wizards represent magic, the warriors represent might. And the warriors are great. They're a beautiful collection. Obviously they're non-magic users, but what they lack in magic, they make up for in brawn. They have weapons. They have big muscles. They're very cool looking. They're our largest collection by token supply. And what I love about the warriors is they sort of represent an entry point for people who want to come into our ecosystem because they are cheaper to buy. And so, yeah, that's our current collection right now. I believe it totals about 25,000 character tokens in all. But that's the ecosystem. And together, all of these character tokens are building this world with us.
Bear, anything to add to that? Any ones that you think are super cool or that maybe people should be aware that wasn't touched on yet?
I think we're very like Elf. I will never be able to do a better job of explaining our character better than Elf. That's why I love him. But I think one thing to look at when people come in, there's more than just the character collection. So Elf mentioned opening that gate, right? Well, those locks on that gate that people had to open, then they got a golden lock, right? And so then you have that flame that people used to burn the wizard and turn into a soul. You can actually melt that golden lock and upgrade your weapon for your warrior. And then there's another collection called the Anthenium, which were basically they came in the form of treat boxes. And so these are little items that I love. Elf did a fantastic job of drawing all of these different items. And they, I think their primary use is really to help inspire story, but they're also tokens in themselves, right? And so we have a lot of really cool, like sort of fun stuff in terms of, what we do with those treats that I think, we're probably going to implement them into this Goblin Town game. But I guess point is like there's sub collections that aren't character based that I think people will stumble across. I think this is probably one of our biggest challenges is, people look, I can't tell you how many times I've heard like, oh, I love the Wizards. It's just so complicated. I don't get it. and like every day. And so this is like, because we're world builders, you need a lot of fodder to build a world. And the way, go ahead.
I would say to those people, like, the people who say that are probably the people who say, I don't want to watch Game of Thrones because there's too many characters. It's just like, well, you're not the right audience. Like, that's the beauty of these fantasy franchises, the complexity, the history, the 100 characters. Like, this is what gives birth to like really deep Wikipedias and fandoms. Like, you can just go deep into this lore. And that's what we're trying to build with all these tokens. Like, we've got a whole token ecosystem where every token interacts with the other tokens in it. So yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if I would use the word complicated. I would use the word just a beautiful tapestry of a world that we're building.
I didn't say it was complicated. I said that's what the feedback I get. Sure. But actually, Schiller, like for us, this is a great experience. Like, we're always not turning the tables, but we love getting feedback from people, especially people who are like just getting introduced to our world. I mean, I have this theory that like maybe my percentages are off, but you'll get the gist. It's like 95% of the people who own an NFT, I think, are really motivated by financial gain, right? And by the way, totally fine. It's completely necessary for this whole thing to work. So I'm not hating on it. The point is like I think there's a lot of people who talk about like I am my NFT is me, and I love that, right? But I still think the real motivation is up and to the right. And so for us, what we found, I think this is what you were getting at, Alf, that like 5% or that 10% that really are in Web3 because they love the innovation technology, they want to find belonging and community. Those are the people that we super over index in. But I'd be interested to like get your take, Schiller, on like, do you think that even stands true? Like this crazy like unbalanced ratio and maybe like where you think it's going to go?
I mean, I think that it's a whole nother realm where, I mean, for people that are buying stocks or something, right? Like, I think everybody that's in the space right now is aware that it's like, hey, you're not like actually buying a stock of something. You're like, hey, is this going to be successful? Because, back in the day, if you knew certain movies or whatever were going to be super successful, like let's just say The Office, when they first released DVDs, or if they had any kind of collectibles or stuff, you'd be like, hell yeah, I want to get into it, because later on it would just be really cool because you're super fans of a way. But now it's like, hey, you're a fan of something before anything's even produced. So for you guys, as an example, let's just, for argument's sake, say, okay, like I'm kind of scrolling through Twitter. I see, okay, like there's this Forgotten Wizards rune thing. I check out the trailer. I'm like, oh, damn. Like, I think I would absolutely love this show. And then suddenly I'm a fan. I start looking at things and I'm like, maybe I want to get into this before it really blows up and the whole world finds about it. And then, to an extent, it's bragging rights. But I do agree that there is a lot of the financial perspective of it that people are looking at, but there is kind of a world where all of it can kind of come together. It's just the problem is whenever you talk about anything right now, because there are so few things that have actually come out of these different ventures, that it is, you know, hey, did you make money on this collection or not? When it should be, you know, more judged on, I mean, maybe hopefully by the end of this year, almost all these collections where you can say, okay, here's a couple episodes of a show similar to like Stoner Cats, for example, and then really have a completely new judgment on that.
Yeah, I super appreciate that take, and I think you're right. I think the reality is what we want is the mix, is what you're saying, right? Like you want to buy into something because you believe in where they're going, you believe in the team, you believe in the vision, and you totally like vibe with that, right? And so yeah, I love that. I think the other piece of it for us is, or for me, I'll speak for myself, is that, you know what, maybe there's 1 million people that own an NFT. I actually think it's like much less than that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think, I don't even know, Shill, you may know the most updated numbers. I think lately I heard like there's like 2 million wallets. I don't even really trade NFTs. Because my exposure to Web3 and NFTs is my day job. But like I even have like 5 wallets. So what? Like maybe there's 600,000 people that own an NFT. So for me, my biggest worry is like, how many times can the same people go around in a circle in the same echo chamber until we can't hold each other up? And so I think for us, that's a big reason why I think we're really excited about all the tooling that is coming soon to onboard everybody else. Like Reddit did such a great job, right? Of like people didn't even know they were interacting with a digital asset until after the fact.
Well, it's also why we're pushing so hard on the show and the comic book, because like my dream is that I want a large audience who can appreciate Forgotten Runes and they never touch crypto or NFTs and they still love the franchise. I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
That's, you know, you guys have had some of the amazing clippable moments here, so I'm really excited to get into this. But, you know, talking of NFTs, we got to do it justice, because you guys got merch too, and you got some actually kind of cool merch here with this varsity jacket. And I want to stick on this for a second. So how did you guys come up with designing this jacket? Because it feels like a little bit more in depth than a lot of other collections have. How much does it cost, and do you have to have one of the NFTs to be able to purchase it?
Okay, hold on. I just want to say that varsity jacket was all Bear's idea. And since
a year ago,
we have been giving him so much shit about that varsity jacket. I don't know if you've ever seen that show Silicon Valley, but I always compare it to that one jacket episode where...
Oh, the Pied Piper jacket?
Yeah. But go ahead, Bear. Schiller likes it, so tell him about your jacket.
By the way, Schiller, you're my new best friend.
Yeah, hell yeah.
No, like, so my wife is always on trend, and I also have another friend who's in the cult named Two Crows, who's like in the fashion and like jewelry business. And so they're both like in my ear, like, oh, you guys got to do like a varsity jacket. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I would never wear a varsity jacket. And then they're like, you need to make a varsity jacket. It needs to be loud and like almost like ugly and like absurd. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, okay, we'll design this jacket. And so we go through it, and like we find the guy. Two Crows like hooks me up with the guy who like makes all of the jackets. And I'm talking about the guy, like he makes Bad Bunny's jacket on stage. Like it's not like he's selling them to fucking Target. He's making the jackets that are like sell for like $5,000. And so we go through this whole entire process. We get the patches designed, and it's fucking expensive. Like it costs like $750 just to make that jacket. Like
Holy
if we sold that jacket retail, it would cost like $2,000 to $4,000. And so I'm like spending all this time on it, and Doda and Alpha are like, "What are you doing with this stupid jacket? Like it's so fucking ugly." And I'm like, guys, I'm telling you, like we're onto something.
Hold on, and also a lot of our cult members too are like, what the fuck? This project isn't for jocks, it's for nerds.
And I'm like, no one understands the meta. I'm like, that's the whole point, is like we're wizards and we're gonna fucking come up with this shit. Anyway, wow, we're spending a lot of time on this jacket. But point is we designed the jacket. I got so much hate. I was like, fuck everyone, we're not doing the jacket. And then everybody comes out with varsity jackets, and Elf is like, maybe we should do that varsity jacket. And so it's finally available. You don't need a wizard to buy it. It's quite expensive. We're not planning on selling a ton of them. But what I think is really cool about it is you can actually, in the form to order it, you can put your wizard or warrior number in the form, and then you will have this custom wizard, huge, super high-end embroidered wizard or warrior on the back, which I think is awesome. So,
well, that was the reason why I loved it, by the way, because it seemed that it was actually like a high quality attempt at creating something. It wasn't just like, hey, we're, print, ship.
Yeah, no, this is like, it's I got forced into like using the nicest leather, like all those patches. Dude, that back patch is literally like 1.5 feet tall. It costs like $250 just to digitize that. And so it's just like the nicest of the nice. I think it's cool.
It's bespoke. Is that the word bespoke?
What bespoke? Yeah, yes, yeah. And then also you can get whatever name you want embroidered on the front. Anyway, it's a cool jacket. It's a high-end piece. I think we're also really excited about. I feel really good about the merch that the designs that we've done, and we're really just pressing on the gas there. A ton of stuff. We just reopened the shop with some new designs. You can check it out on our website. But yeah, we love the physicals. We love other projects who do physicals. And in a world where royalties are going to zero or already at zero, I think it's important for projects to find other revenue streams. And the rest of the world's been making money on like legacy, industries. So why not tap into it?
So you guys also have a comic book, and just for my understanding, it sounds like if you do purchase something from the shop, you get a comic with it. But also the comic itself, it looks like it's free to read online, which doesn't normally seem to be the case across the entirety of Web3. So how come you decided to do a comic? How come you decided to make it free? And how come you decided to offer one for everyone that bought some from the shop?
You do creative, Elf, and I'll talk about where it's going.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, just a big part of the franchise is storytelling, and storytelling in multiple mediums, including legacy mediums like comics. And what I love about let me just another wrinkle to our type of storytelling. On our website, we have this digital book called the Book of Lore. When you own a character, a wizard or a warrior, or really any character, you have right access to that character's page. We have over 4,000 entries of people in our community who have written stories and developed the lore behind their character. We use that book of lore as the source material for the show and the comic and any other type of storytelling we will be doing. That issue 0 features a handful of wizards from our community and the lore that they wrote. It's actually printed in a physical comic, and we will continue to do that with the issues that we go forward with. This is one of the beautiful things of decentralized world building. You get to see your creative content on the TV screen, on physical print, in these big media expressions that you might never have access to otherwise. So, obviously the comic book is a huge like proof of concept in this idea. And we gave this one away because right now it's all about scaling the franchise. We're not necessarily trying to make a shit ton of money just yet. It's more important to get Forgotten Runes into the zeitgeist. So anyway, I'll let you follow up on that, Bear.
Yeah, so we're really proud of that first comic book. I feel like we put it together with Scotch tape, but it came together really awesome. And the cover artist is this guy Riley Brown. He's been drawing Deadpool and Batman and just DC Marvel guy for over 15 years. He did the cover, and now he's doing the rest of the series. So the whole series is 10 issues. We released 0 for free. We printed 200,000 copies of it and gave them all away for free. We were at both Comic-Cons, had a booth, had street teams, people dressed up like wizards, giving them out for free. There's QR codes for the trailer. There's QR codes for community projects. Coinbase even bought the back cover. And so now we're in production on the rest of the series. and we're like on like the 1-inch yard line of signing a really big sort of global publishing deal. So we'll be in every physical comic store, mostly across the world. And then, and what's another cool thing about this job is like we get to learn how all these different industries work. So once you're halfway through a 10-issue series, you start binding those issues together, and those will be hardback and softback books that will be in Barnes and Noble and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's a big commitment. And again, just like with the television show with Derek, just like with the Runiverse game with by Sonic, the comic book, we had to find the best of the best, and that's the person that's seeing it through, and it's really exciting.
You talked about earlier where you guys kind of connected with 10 other blue chip collections to kind of have a collaboration of sorts. Is there anything else in the works with other collections out there for the future?
I mean, yes, absolutely. Collaboration is key, especially at this moment in time in the market.
One,
oh, go ahead. Well, so I was going to pass it to you, Alf. Like something I want you to talk about is 3D, because I think that's going to be the real next phase for us in a lot of ways.
Yep. So in my opinion, every NFT project needs to have a metaverse strategy as part of their stack. We are seeing a lot of 2D metaverses out there for which we are well prepared. We have actual character walk cycles for every single wizard. You can enter any 2D metaverse that's open with your wizard, and you can walk around and it will be animated walking around. The next layer of that is 3D metas. People like Nifty Island and a handful of others that I'm not allowed to talk about right now. But we are currently transforming our entire collection of characters into 3D. You will be able to use these 3D rigs and deploy into any 3D open metaverse. We're gonna have this collection done in like, I hopefully March.
No, you promised me early March. Killer, you heard it.
So
don't fuck with me, Alf. Maybe March. No.
So early April, we'll have all of these done. But no, I mean, but so like to the question of partnerships, yeah, I mean, like anyone who is building a 2D or a 3D meta, if you want wizards to be in it, we've got the assets ready to go, and we've already signed on with a bunch already.
Yeah. And I think just as an example of what you're talking about, Alf, you know, Elf painstakingly made all of these walk cycles for the initial pixelated sprites. And we were one of the first collections in a project called World Wide Web. Do you know that, Schiller?
Yep,
that project?
yep.
And so we were the first ones to have full walk cycles. And I think really that's where it dawned on us, and maybe we were late to the game, is this idea of like, okay, we have a fanatical, super engaged community. If we arm them with assets that they can take other places, not only is that valuable and fun for our community members, but that's like a portable built-in audience for other metas, right? And so like, you know, we had so many wizards in World Wide Web in the beginning that those devs, and we love that team. They're amazing. They're awesome. They're continuing to build. Love them. They built us our own token gated bar called the Thirsty Wizard in World Wide Web. And so it was this moment where I was like, oh, this is a huge hook of business into other partners who are building metas. Because at that time, I mean, even kind of still, most metaverses, no one's in them, right? They're just like empty wastelands. And so this idea of like, we can walk up to any metaverse and say, listen, we have X amount of people who are willing to just jump in here and start actually using the thing that you built. I just think it's a no-brainer.
Now, as we are wrapping up here, I kind of want to open the floor here. Do you guys have any kind of final things for somebody that's tuned in that's like, damn, I really like this stuff, and just kind of as a, hey, here's why you should join us, the community, and pay attention to the game, because you don't even need to own the NFTs to partake into what we're doing?
Well, you know, I always come back to the decentralized world build mission, which is, you know, if you love to create, if you love to write stories, and honestly, even if you don't think you're good at it, you would be amazed at how suddenly your mindset on that will shift once you actually own a character to create with. You know, it's not like you're using some other franchise's IP, like a Ninja Turtle or a Star Wars character or some video game character that you're making fan art on or doing fan fiction, and then they serve you a DMCA. No, you come into our ecosystem, you own the character that you're creating with, and you can leverage that. You are certain you're building that character up and making it more valuable by your own creative efforts. And I think that's just where the core of the magic in our community lies.
Yeah,
That's sort of the point.
I'll give the flip side of that coin. If you believe in digital assets, if you believe that digital assets will have value in the future, in a more broader sense, if you're long on the space, we're not such a bad place to be hanging out, because I think for us, we're building for the next phase. We're not building for this phase. And there's a lot of people who are cutting their teeth on running businesses, and we're not competitive with other projects. We want everybody to succeed. Everybody should be holding hands. But the reality is like, a lot of people talk about teams. A lot of people talk about shipping. We're really good at what we do. We're like, we almost have I call it like a sickness. Like, I don't even want to go to bed at night. All I want to do is do this. And so if you're looking for people who are going to be around in 50 years, we're the project, because we're not going anywhere and we're never going to stop.
That was an elegant way of ending it. Guys, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. This has been really insightful and exciting to hear about, and I can't wait to play the game when it does come out.
Schiller, thank you so much for reaching out, man. Really appreciate it. And by the way, I meant to say this up top. I fucking love your ape. Holy
Yo, thank you. Thank you.
That guy's a banger, my God.
Yo, hell yeah. I love it. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat soon.
Peace, homie.
Yo, decent. Yo, look at that. Not bad, eh? Holy. Listen, they like the ape. Okay. I was gonna start going through this like as they were talking about it, and I'm like, there's no way that you're gonna be able to like read this. We're trying to concentrate to what they're doing. It's all over the place. Yo, Wicked, how's it going? Dude, I saw your comment earlier. Sorry guys, I haven't really said too much from the chat just because I was trying to focus on that, because I knew that I'm going to clip a whole bunch of different things from that, and from all of them, to be honest. So if you are following on Twitter or YouTube, expect that from all of the different interviews that we have on here. Still working on that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I really do like Forgotten Ruins as well. And honestly, I never really like looked into it in a deep dive. And so hearing from them, it sounded like they did have a huge vision. One question that I was going to ask, and I didn't, just because I didn't know if it was necessarily appropriate. And I feel like they kind of also justified it. There's been a lot of people, over time within the space who have said, hey, you're diluting your collection, you're doing this. But when they talked about how they've done different systems, how one of them was, hey, you got this like scroll and you could burn a wizard, and then you'd get this soul thing. And then there's these horses that were dropped from a QR code, like all these really, really neat things. And I think that's awesome to see them do it. Yo, Carpig, what's up, boss? And WT, if you're still here, you are a legend, sir. I was re-listening to the GOG AMA. Holy hell, sir. Buffalo Space, there was always Chat GPT to write your lore. I mean, listen, I imagine all these competitions and stuff, because for what, like Jenkins of LA, they had those tickets where you were able to submit a story, and they, you just had to write stuff. I don't know if you actually won anything from it, but if you did,